as you've heard today several times, if you can't grow it yet, it's not legal. We've got to get there. You don't need the Washington State Liquor Control Board to come between you and the cannabis plant. You don't need those guys to tell you, oh, okay, you can have some, but just an ounce at the time. That's why we're not where we need to be yet. The reason we need to be there is because this relationship between the human species and the cannabis plant is something that's been going on, according to the best archaeology we have, for at least 12,000 years. We have such a close relationship to this plant that it responds intelligently to our needs. If you are interested in knowing more about the coevolution of the human species and the cannabis plant, you might want to start out by Googling endocannabinoid system. If you want to take a shortcut, you can try out tokesignals.com. If you want a short history of the relationship between us and this plant, which has changed human society in a lot of different ways, you can read a book I wrote called The Little Black Book of Marijuana. It's been out for about 3 years now, and as a matter of fact, a new edition is coming out later this year, updated with the latest legalization information. Until we have reached the end zone, until we can all grow without fear, until we can smoke in public, until we can share with our friends, until we can finally get rid of the faulty idea that we need to regulate this stuff out of existence. We're not where we need to be. I hear a lot about regulate marijuana like alcohol. Why in the world would you want to regulate a non-poisonous plant the way you do a deadly poison? Alcohol will kill you if you drink too much of it. Marijuana's not going to do that. You don't want to regulate marijuana like alcohol. You want to regulate marijuana like tomatoes. Therefore, it shouldn't be regulated like alcohol is. We are not going to be where we need to be until marijuana is treated as another vegetable in the garden. We all want to be able to grow. We all want to be able to carry forward this wonderful tradition, this 12,000-year human tradition responsible for the very beginnings of civilization. We want to carry that into the future. We don't need anybody to come between us and that wonderful heritage. And let me tell you, cannabis is your birthright. Cannabis is your heritage. Don't let anybody tell you it isn't. Don't let anybody tell you you should be ashamed of the fact that you have a relationship with this plant. This plant responds to our needs. It produces the cannabinoids we need for homeostasis. It allows us to balance our minds and our bodies. It allows us to come together peaceably as human beings. The goal which we seek, which is furthering the relationship of humanity in this cannabis plant, is more important than any of our individual personalities. It's more important than any of our individual egos. And I, for one, am not going to give up until we all reach that end zone together.
Hi, and welcome to episode 41 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First of all, let's look at our Toke Signals bud pick of the week. We have an indica-dominant strain of flowers this week. It's called Golden Temple Kush. I found these flowers at an access point in Bellingham, Washington, called Samish Way Holistic Center, for the good price of $10 a gram, and well worth it. Let's do the news now, shall we? In Oregon this week, the legalization drive there has rented 20 billboards across the state. Activists there have gotten these billboards in prominent positions across Oregon in support of their campaign to end criminal penalties for cannabis. The billboards are found in Portland, Eugene, Beaverton, Roseburg, and Salem, and they carry the messages, "Help end marijuana prohibition" on some of them, or "Prohibition is the problem, hemp is the answer" on the rest. Of course, ending prohibition is the goal, but energizing Oregon and showing a solid outreach and grassroots effort is key, according to activist Michael Bashara of the Campaign for the Restoration and Regulation of Hemp, which is behind Initiatives 21 and 22 there in Oregon. Oregon's 2014 Initiative 21 is a constitutional amendment to end prohibition and stop imposing criminal penalties for marijuana. It needs 116,284 valid Oregon voter signatures by July 3rd to qualify for the November ballot. Initiative 22 is a proposed statute to regulate and tax marijuana and allow farmers to grow hemp for fuel, fiber, and food. It needs 87,213 valid registered Oregon voter signatures to qualify for the November ballot. These measures are going to be on the ballot, said Chief Petitioner Paul Stanford. Prohibition doesn't work. Filling our jails with nonviolent marijuana prisoners is a waste of public resources and people's future. We will end prohibition and criminal penalties for marijuana, Stanford said. Our initiatives are designed to move Oregon ahead of both Washington and Colorado, so Oregon's economy can reap the benefits of these rapidly growing industries sooner rather than later. Oregon's economy will benefit from the end of the prohibition of hemp and cannabis, Stanford said. In the United States this week, we have Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell slamming the DEA for blocking Kentucky hemp research. Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the Kentucky Republican, has weighed in on the political firestorm that has ensued since the Drug Enforcement Administration recently seized legal hemp seeds bound for a Kentucky hemp research program that was approved by Congress. Senator McConnell told Politico on Wednesday night it is an outrage that DEA is using finite taxpayer dollars to impound legal industrial hemp seeds. The Kentucky Agriculture Department is suing the DEA. Hemp is not legal to grow in the United States, though hemp products can be produced and sold in the U.S. Some states have made its cultivation legal, but these states, North Dakota, Hawaii, Kentucky, Maine, Maryland, Oregon, California, Montana, West Virginia, and Vermont, haven't yet begun to grow it because of resistance from the DEA. A few months ago, Congress legalized the production of hemp for research purposes in states that want to allow it. But when Kentucky recently tried to import hemp seeds to begin production, the DEA seized those seeds. Kentucky officials, including Republican Agriculture Commissioner James Comer, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, were angered by this move. The seizure is the latest misstep by the DEA, which is being investigated by the Department of Justice for numerous scandals. It is also the latest embarrassment for DEA Administrator Michelle Leonhardt, who is increasingly out of step with Attorney General Eric Holder, with President Obama, and with both Republicans and Democrats in Congress on sentencing, on marijuana, and on other drug policy reforms. It is clear at this point that Leonhardt lacks the ability to lead and should resign, said Bill Piper, Director of National Affairs for the Drug Policy Alliance. She is plagued with scandals, out of touch with reality, and increasingly an embarrassment to both Attorney General Holder and President Obama. Earlier this month, the Department of Justice's Office of the Inspector General launched investigations into numerous DEA scandals, including the massacre of civilians in Honduras, the use of National Security Administration data to both spy on virtually all Americans and to systematically fabricate evidence, controversial uses of confidential informants, airline passenger searches, and sexual misconduct. DEA Administrator Michelle Leonhardt herself has been at the center of several scandals, including the House of Death scandal, in which the DEA may have turned a blind eye to torture and murder, and the Andrew Chambers scandal, in which the DEA rehired a confidential informant with a history of lying. Moreover, Leonhardt is increasingly publicly opposing drug policy reforms being pursued by her bosses, Attorney General Eric Holder and President Obama, and both Republicans and Democrats in Congress. She publicly rebuked President Obama for admitting that marijuana is as safe as alcohol. She told members of Congress that the DEA will continue to go after marijuana even in states where it is legal, despite Department of Justice guidance stating otherwise. And she's even spoken out against bipartisan drug sentencing reform in Congress that the Obama administration is supporting. Representative Steve Cohen and other members of Congress have called on Leonhardt to resign. Representative Jared Polis, a Democrat from Colorado, says in his dealings with Leonhardt, he has, quote, found her to be completely incompetent and unknowledgeable. Just last September, more than 120 groups from across the political spectrum and around the globe, including the ACLU, Witness for Peace, Drug Policy Alliance, and the International Drug Policy Consortium, sent a letter to Congress and the DOJ calling for an investigation into the DEA for its role in a long list of deeply disturbing incidents. DEA Administrator Leonhardt is virtually the only person left who still zealously supports the failed war on drugs, said Piper. The U.S. and the rest of the world are moving toward an approach that prioritizes public health and legal regulation, but she remains hopelessly committed to the failed war on drugs approach. It is time for her to go. Also in the U.S. this week, a new NFL policy would finally reduce punishments for marijuana. The National Football League is ready to address the marijuana issue by renegotiating its drug policy. The new rules will reportedly reduce punishments for cannabis use. The drug policy renegotiation, which has been underway since 2011, will also significantly increase the threshold for a positive marijuana test. A source told ESPN that the NFL's cannabis policy is outdated, pointing out the World Anti-Doping Agency has a higher threshold for a positive marijuana test than does the Football League. Meanwhile, the NFL Players Association has expressed to the league an interest in studying medical marijuana, but believes the policy changes are immediately needed in the meantime. In a standoff over arbitration of discipline, the Players Association has asked that disciplinary appeals be heard by an independent arbitrator. The NFL continues to insist that the commissioner have final say over such matters. Many players have lobbied for relaxing the punishments for marijuana use in the NFL, citing cannabis as a safe way to relieve pain and stress. The new policy may not go into effect until after a marijuana suspension is levied on Cleveland Browns wide receiver Josh Gordon, who led the league with 1,646 receiving yards last season in 14 games. That was Gordon's second failed drug test. In Colorado this week, the symphony there is trying to calm down Denver city officials. They are concerned about classical cannabis-friendly concerts that the symphony planned to hold. The Colorado Symphony now says a series of marijuana-friendly classical fundraising concerts will be by invitation only in an attempt to calm concerns from Denver city officials that audiences were going to break the law by smoking pot in public. The symphony also said in a Tuesday statement that it was taking information about those three events off its website and refunding the money for tickets already purchased. The events, called Classically Cannabis, the High Note Series, had been scheduled to begin later this month in Denver's Space Gallery. The concerts will now be open only to a list of VIP guests by invitation. We provide you with this letter to dissuade you from hosting the event, reads the sternly worded letter signed by Stacy Lukes, director of the Denver Department of Excise and Licenses. However, if you go forward, we will exercise any and all options available to the city of Denver to halt the event and hold the business owners and event organizers responsible for any violations of law. We are also ready to hold individual attendees responsible for any violations of city ordinances or state law prohibiting public consumption of marijuana, the letter threatens. Colorado became the first state to legalize marijuana for recreational use after state voters approved ballot measure Amendment 64 in November 2012. Under this law, people 21 and older can use cannabis in private, possess up to an ounce of weed, and grow up to 6 marijuana plants. But Denver's letter chides Colorado Symphony CEO co-chair Jerome H. Kern that Amendment 64's immunity from prosecution under state and local laws granted for adult possession and consumption of marijuana does not extend to smoking openly and publicly or in a manner that endangers others. The new rules were worked out with the city attorney after receiving the letter, according to Symphony officials. The warning has cannabis advocates protesting. Don't they have anything better to do? Said activist attorney Rob Corey, who represents marijuana clients. You will have to buy a ticket. It is still a private event, and every adult that comes into the event consents to the purpose of that event. Also this week, we had a press release from Cheryl Schumann, but is anyone surprised? Schumann has finished taking over Moms for Marijuana. Was anybody really dumb enough not to see this coming? In a move which probably didn't surprise anyone in the cannabis community who has remotely been paying any attention. Cheryl Schumann on Friday announced the official completion of her takeover of Moms for Marijuana International, the formerly grassroots group over which Schumann acquired day-to-day control last fall. Yeah, it's now the Cheryl Schumann Show. Schumann's heavy-handed takeover of the formerly grassroots organization alienated most of the rank-and-file membership across the United States and the globe. Her clumsy power play managed to piss off Moms chapters as far away as the Philippines, and chapter after chapter either quit the organization in disgust or found themselves tossed out for questioning Schumann's methods and motives. The entire Moms for Marijuana Board of Directors resigned in protest of both Sarah Frank's refusal to turn over financial records requested by the board and Cheryl Schumann's subsequent takeover after taking Frank under her financial wing. Moms for Marijuana's Lindsay Reinhart in November announced on the pages of Toke Signals that I will no longer be silent about Cheryl Schumann. And then Moms for Marijuana Assistant Executive Director Candace R. Junkin in December told her story of what happened, also on the pages of Toke Signals. Despite repeated claims during the midst of the brouhaha which followed Schumann's power play, through which she used the weak link in the chain, Moms founder Sarah Frank, as a means of seizing control of the organization, Cheryl insisted that she was only helping Sarah by providing financial assistance and advice. She denied she had any designs on taking over the organization, and a few poor credulous souls might even have bought that. But the inevitable word finally came down in a Friday press release headlined, World's Largest Women's Marijuana Organization, Moms for Marijuana, appoints mother-daughter team, Cheryl and Amy Schumann, as new executive director and deputy director. So apparently Cheryl wanted to go ahead and nail down a line of succession as well. The press release, which describes Cheryl and Amy as the vibrant mother-daughter team, tells us that Cheryl Schumann will take the role of executive director, bringing her 25 years of public relations, media, product branding, and business development to the blossoming nonprofit organization. Outgoing executive director Sarah Frank reportedly at least got another nice outfit and a facial beauty treatment out of the deal, paid for by Cheryl on a visit this month to Schumann in Beverly Hills after having already won one similar Queen for a Day trip at Schumann's expense back when she handed over control. She reportedly got a new dress and a hairdo that time. Cheryl and Amy have accomplished so much extraordinary progress in cannabis reform worldwide, reaching millions of parents through the utilization of mainstream media, Sarah Frank claims in a press release from Schumann. It was an easy decision. Everything I have ever seen them do has been historic and monumental in cannabis reform, Frank claimed, raising the interesting academic question of whether anyone knows of anything Amy Schumann has actually done, let alone anything historic and monumental in cannabis reform. Together, they will lead the executive direction of Moms for Marijuana into the future, Frank assures us. You'll have to imagine her wearing her nice new outfit from Schumann while she's saying that. I've known Sarah for many years now, and I've always been inspired by her vision and dedication to moms and parents around the world, said Schumann, who installed herself as executive director due to Frank's departure. I am honored by the opportunity to join such a dynamic and ambitious organization with such a clear and focused mission, improving the lives of the world's most vulnerable, women and children. Frank will retain a ceremonial position as founding director of Moms for Marijuana, also known as being put out to pasture. Amy Schumann, for her part, was quick to focus on the financial aspects of suddenly being in control of a worldwide organization with a media presence and thousands of members. Yes, the financial aspects. After all, she said, women buy 85% of all household and consumer products, according to Adweek. As an entrepreneur, it's exciting to be on the ground floor of the cutting edge of making news and witnessing a convergence of celebrity and cannabis culture. Ah, how far Moms for Marijuana has drifted, from housewives to celebrity culture in Beverly Hills. Ah, well, okay then. Shiny new media-friendly image and stuff. That's fine. But you see where this is going, don't you? Cheryl Schumann goes around Hollywood pitching a reality show based on a vibrant mother-daughter team leading moms for marijuana in 10, 9, 8. The right leadership is everything, Frank said. Am I the only one who can barely make my way through the thick irony here? Working with Cheryl and Amy, Sarah said, these past few years, it was evident immediately that it was a perfect fit in terms of values, integrity, and personality. The addition of Amy and Cheryl Schumann on our team elevates Mom's stature, adding prestige and thus creating a positive halo around the organization, Frank said. Yeah, she really said that. Schumann, whose website has been repeatedly taken down by Anonymous this month, was ironically chosen for a special Activist of the Year award at Seattle Hemp Fest 2013. Just prior to that festival in August, she tittered all over Facebook about a little bird telling her she was going to get some kind of award at Hemp Fest. And sure enough, she did, in a smarmy main stage ceremony with Hemp Fest director Vivian McPeak, his second-in-command John Davis, and would-be media figure, the always eager to smooch ass, Rectal Russ Belville. But strangely enough, HempFest seemed to quickly get buyer's remorse after awarding Schumann, and all references to the award were scrubbed from the HempFest website after the Miles for Marijuana scandal broke late last year. It's now all but impossible to find any mention online of what had been a highly touted award, the only one of its kind ever awarded by HempFest, we think at least, since HempFest apparently just doesn't want to talk about it anymore. I really try not to hate anyone, Candace Junkin told Toke Signals. Not anyone. I try to find good in everyone, and I even tried to find it in Cheryl. But I can honestly and ashamedly say I abhor that woman. I didn't understand the depth of her depravity until it was too late, Junkin told us. If I knew then the things that I know now, Cheryl Schumann would never have been a part of Moms for Marijuana. I feel like if it weren't for her, Sarah and I could have fixed it all, Candace told me. In the United States this week, the 1986 Indy 500 Rookie of the Year is serving a life sentence for marijuana. Racing fans might wonder whatever happened to one of the world's most exciting young stars, 1986 Indy 500 Rookie of the Year, Randy Lanier. Well, these days, Lanier can be found at Coleman Federal Prison in Florida, where he is serving his 26th year of incarceration, serving a sentence of life without parole for a first-time, nonviolent marijuana offense. At the time of his indictment, Lanier was poised to become one of racing's all-time greats. In 1980, he had 4 wins in his own self-financed 1957 Porsche Speedster. In 1984, he earned the IMSA GTP Championship and was named Most Improved Driver. His 1986 Vanderbilt Rookie of the Year award preceded his 1986 Indy 500 Rookie of the Year award. By 1987, the United States federal government had put an end to his racing dreams. Lanier had no prior offenses and no weapons were involved in the continuing criminal enterprise he was accused of running. While others were indicted and incarcerated, only Lanier and one other remained behind bars. Like most prisoners serving life sentences for marijuana, Lanier's refusal to cooperate, in other words, indict others to rat them out, helped bring about his sentence of natural death in prison. Randy Lanier has paid a steep price for his integrity, but new efforts are underway to get him and other nonviolent drug offenders released. A new Change.org petition penned by Beth Curtis of LifeForPot.com, whose brother John Knock is one of those prisoners, offers an easy way the president could remedy this situation: grant mass clemency to nonviolent drug offenders serving life sentences. You can find the link to that petition in the Hemp News story. Systemic clemency has been used frequently throughout the history of our country and is a presidential tool and responsibility that is usually used to restore justice when retribution has caused a rift in the social fabric. The war on drugs is our contemporary example of this excess. Author, cannabis reform activist, and petition campaign manager Sherry Sicard said Curtis's simple common sense solution is something nearly everyone can agree on. Young and old, rich and poor, Democrat and Republican, hardly anyone thinks it is a good idea to waste tax dollars locking nonviolent senior citizen marijuana offenders away for life, Sicard said. The organizers, along with Lanier's family, are hoping for a strong show of public support on this petition, with the plans to use it to bolster new clemency efforts currently being drafted. In the meantime, Lanier watches the Indy 500 from a television in the prison rec room, and he longs for the time when he can once again join in celebrating the sport that he so dearly loves. In Iowa this week, a man claimed his McDonald's burger had marijuana on it, and he wasn't loving it. An Iowa man claims the burger he got from a local McDonald's drive-thru had marijuana right there on the patty. I've seen a lot of stuff, but never something like this, said Lieutenant Jason Bell of the Ottumwa Police Department. I really haven't had a lot of investigations where I focused so much on cheeseburgers. Ottumwa police said they were investigating the case. They said a man bought the burger for his pregnant fiancée. They're alleging that they received an order from the McDonald's that had some suspected marijuana on the hamburgers, Officer Bell explained. A sample was sent to the Division of Criminal Investigation for analysis, according to the cops. If the substance turns out to indeed be cannabis, they say it's a mystery why someone would do this. The cops are looking at everybody from the McDonald's employees to the couple who reported the Bud Burger. The restaurant remains open. We are exploring all possibilities at this point, and that factor is one thing we're considering with the investigation, Bell said. It's more of a serious allegation against a business in the community. In any business, we want to make sure we come to the best possible conclusion on where it originated from. Police said they found quote-unquote drug paraphernalia on one McDonald's employee, but said there have been no charges in the case. Lab results on the burger buddage, which appears to be consistent with marijuana according to the cops, won't be available for at least a month, they said. Hope you decide to come back and join us again next week on Toke Signals. We'll bring you all the freshest news one more time. Until then, I think you ought to stay lifted. See you then.